Luisteraars, goedemiddag en wees welkom. Dit is Smart Radio. Vandaag met een bijzondere uitzending en we dragen de microfoons meteen over aan de jongeren onder leiding van Tony Pengel.
Goeiedag luisteraars, ik ben Tony Pengel, beter bekend als U-niq. Ik zit hier aan tafel met Dr. Umar Johnson, die vanavond en morgenavond in Nederland is om lezingen te geven. Het gesprek gaat in het Engels zijn en ik hoop dat jullie kunnen volgen. Ik doe daarna een kleine samenvatting in het Nederlands, maar het gaat vooral om het gesprek in het Engels, dus probeer zo goed mogelijk mee te luisteren. Dr. Umar Johnson, I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you, my brother. It's an honor to be here in the Netherlands for the first time. I want to send peace and blessings out to all my brothers and sisters of African descent here in the Netherlands and listening throughout Europe and around the world. It's an honor to be here. I travel quite a bit, and whenever I have the opportunity to cross the Atlantic and visit our brothers and sisters on this side of the water, it's always an honor to do that. It's my firm resolve that Pan-African nationalism is the only way forward for our people, that we have to go back to the operational principles that were laid out by the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey and those before him in order to unite our race. I think that international unity, global cooperation amongst African people is the only solution to the race problem.
Can you please go a little bit deeper into that? What the ideology is for an Pan-Africanist?
Pan-Africanism is based on two very simple principles. The first one is that we are African people first. We are African people before we are Muslims. We are African people before we are Christians. We are African people before we belong to any Masonic lodges or secret societies. We are African people above the languages that we speak. We are African people above the nationalities that we identify with. Pan-Africanism places our racial identity above all others. And by doing that, it eliminates the potential of these other superficial identities from becoming issues of division amongst us. The Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey said that Africans are cursed with petty differences. We will find a reason to fight each other. So Pan-Africanism eliminates the need to fight because we see each other as members of the same racial family. So whether you come from Africa, whether you live in Europe, the Caribbean, Central South America, whether you're in the States, I don't see a Nigerian, I see an African. Okay, I don't see a black Dutch, I see an African. Okay, I don't see a black British, I see an African. I don't see a New Yorker, I see an African. And so by keeping the African identity first, it eliminates us or prevents us from focusing on all these other petty differences that have historically kept us apart from each other for centuries. The other principle of Pan-Africanism is that we have an obligation to each other and an obligation to solve our problems by ourselves, without any outside interference or contributions. Now, sometimes that's considered rather controversial because a lot of black people have been raised on a steady diet of integrationism that says that we have to cooperate with other people in order to solve our problems. But if you study most other racial groups in this world, whether it be the Arab, the East Indian, the Asian, the Anglo-Saxon, or the Jew, most of them solve their problems exclusively amongst their own community.
That's right.
We're the only people who are always looking for input and support from external racial sources when we have everything that we need. And that comes from low racial self-esteem. It also comes from historical conditioning that has made black people feel insecure about being proud to be African, and even more insecure about being racially exclusive. Racial exclusivity is a very uncomfortable topic for us to talk about. Now, if you look at anyone else, they're comfortable being racially exclusive. Chinese folks are racially exclusive. East Indians are racially exclusive. Their holidays are for them. Their businesses are for them. Their cultural organizations are for them. No one else has to defend their racial exclusivity but us. But Pan-Africanism says that we have to do it regardless, and we have to stop being concerned with what everyone else thinks about us. What we think about ourselves is more important. And to that end, I've coined the phrase unapologetically African. We have to stop apologizing for being African, and we have to stop apologizing for trying to save ourselves.
And why do you think we have so much insecurities?
I think it's because we're miseducated. Mm-hmm. And as you know, I'm a doctor of clinical psychology and a school psychologist and an educator in the political sciences. Those are my formal degrees that I hold. But as an educator, when I look at the educational systems that African children are subject to around the world, not just in America, but in Europe and Africa, in the Caribbean, in Canada, I've been everywhere. And I haven't seen an educational system yet that adequately meets the needs of African people. Most of the educational paradigms in which our children exist are designed to prepare them to work for Europeans. They're designed to prepare them to be serfs for Europeans, to be the economic slaves of Europeans. I haven't found a school or school district or an educational program or curriculum that prepares our children in the art of acquiring, protecting, and maintaining power. And when you're dealing with oppression and white supremacy, and we must not be afraid to call it what it is white supremacy. It is not just discrimination. It is a race-based powered program designed to keep the masses of African people powerless and disorganized to the benefit of a few European, a power elite. And the education system does not teach our children about the power elite and how it operates. They don't know anything about the Trilateral Commission or the Council on Foreign Relations or the United Nations and who really controls the United Nations, the Bilderbergs, the economic systems. Our children aren't given a political education. They're not given a militaristic education. They're not given an economic education. They're not given a spiritual education. So what our children need most is deliberately kept away from them. And instead, they're simply being pumped full of nonsensical, irrelevant European facts. And then after they've been subject to a European education, we reactionarily in the African community want to try to rescue them from their post-traumatic slavery disorder. Well, that's very backwards and awkward, because what you should be trying to do is build your own educational reality for your children so you don't have to rescue them after they've been brainwashed. The best years in which to condition a child is from birth to age 12. Whoever controls that baby's mind from conception until age 12 is likely to rule the unconscious for the rest of that child's life. Because after your 21st birthday, it is very difficult to change the underlying program upon which your consciousness works. So we give our children's best minds at the best time period, birth to 12, to European school systems, and then after that we spend the rest of their life trying to give them a corrective education. My goal is to build a Pan-African school district. The Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey RBG Leadership Academy for Black Boys, and the Anna Douglas and Amy Jakes Garvey RBG Leadership Academy for Black Girls, and then the Douglas and Garvey for the boys. Because I believe as a psychologist that the only way we're going to fix our situation is to reconstruct the African psyche. You have to change the way black people think about themselves, their reality, their ability to change their condition, their ability to change their political trajectory. You can't fix anything else about Africans until you fix the way we think. You can't change the schools, you can't change the economics, you can't change the culture, you can't change the black male-female relationship dynamic until you change the way we think. White supremacy wins because they have socially engineered the way we react to what they do and how we react to each other. So there has to be a psychological revolution before there can be an economic one. There has to be a psychological revolution before there can be a political one. There has to be a psychological revolution before there can be a cultural one. And what makes that so important is because back home in the United States, we have a lot of cultural nationalists. We have a lot of well-read scholars whose minds are full of facts about the African experience. They can quote the pharaohs, they can quote literature, they can quote history, but they haven't internalized it. So you have the data, but you haven't changed the consciousness, which is to say that you cannot replace conditioning with information. You cannot undo post-traumatic slavery with historical instruction alone. You have to socialize the children, teach them a new way of acting, reacting, and behaving. So I disagree with some of our scholars who say just teach our kids their history and you eliminate the menticide. That's not true. I can give you two examples of two men who I respect tremendously. Sheikh Anta Diop okay, who's probably the greatest African historian and anthropologist we ever had. And then you have Ivan van Sertima, one of my all-time favorite great Africologists. Both of these men were masters of African history and culture, but they both married non-African women. So just because you have the information doesn't change behavior. You see, you have to change the program under which the psyche is functioning. For example, you have a laptop. You stick your flash drive in. That flash drive has a certain set of information. You take it out. You stick another flash drive in with a different set of information. All you did was change the information. Before you told them they were slaves. Now you're telling them they are kings. But it doesn't matter. They will still self-destruct because the program that underlies the data hasn't changed. So it doesn't matter how much positive information you give it. If the program is engineered to self-destruct, the people will, no matter how positive the information.
And how are we going to do that?
We have to build our own schools. We have to release our addiction to the proverbial European breasts.
Can you explain what that means?
That means that colonialism and enslavement taught African people to depend on Europeans for everything that they need. Mm-hmm. And we still look to Europeans for everything that they need. Take blacks in America, for example. If you look at brothers and sisters in America, we gross the largest amount of money of all Africans in the world. The largest amount of money of all Africans in the world, but we own almost nothing. Black people, when we came out of slavery in America in December of 1865 with the passage of the 13th Amendment, we owned 0.5% of all the wealth in America. That's 144 years ago. Today, now, we gross over $1 trillion. By far, we're the richest group of Africans on the face of the earth. Those of us in American Africans. With Oprah, Bill Cosby, LeBron James, all these black PhDs and JDs and PsyDs and MDs, we still only own 0.5% of all the wealth in America. 143 years later, we are at the same place we were 143 years ago. Which is why when people say that African people are making progress, globally, they say we're doing better than we've ever been. I disagree. Because I disagree with the definition of progress. For most of us, our definition of progress is to what extent we've gotten white people to be comfortable with us. To what extent we've gotten white people to be able to accept us. That's not my definition of progress. Because you're putting your destiny in the hands of your oppressor. My definition of progress is to what extent have you been able to create and protect the future of your children. To the extent that you are independent and self-reliant, to me, that's progress. So where are our airplanes? Where are our ships? Where are our supermarkets? Where are our distribution networks? Where are our colleges and universities? If you look at the institutions and industries that people need in order to be successful in this world, we own almost none of them. If you look at black music, most black music is distributed by Europeans. Most black merchandise is distributed by Europeans because we don't have a distribution network. We do not own the means of distribution. We don't have planes, ships, trains, or trucks to take product. You have music that you sell. I have information that I sell. Someone else makes clothing. Someone else makes furniture. But if you want to send that furniture around the world so all Africans who want it can buy it, you need distribution. But you ain't got none. So you have to go to the European or the Asian or the Arab and pay them to distribute your product. And as a result of them packaging, advertising, shipping, and insuring your product, they take 85% of the profit. And you're left with almost pennies of it. You see? So we are not making progress. In fact, we're going back. If you look at the incarceration rate of black males anywhere, Europe, South Africa, America, Canada, there's more black men in prison or have been through the prison system in the past 30 years than you've had black people in slavery. So if you say that we've made progress when as many has been to jail after slavery than have been under the chains, what exactly are you talking about? See, the definition of power is the ability to define someone's reality and make them agree with it. When they say that black people are free, well, what is the definition of freedom? Because for me, the definition of freedom isn't F-R-E-E-D-O-M, it's F-R-E-E-D-U-M-B. Freedom. Mentally dumb. What are we free to do? We're not free to build. We're not free to be independent. We're free to take the money that we earn from white people and give it right back to them in their own businesses. Which is why when people ask me about the reparations argument, we're entitled to reparations. But it's no need to go fighting for reparations right now because you have no internal infrastructure. If the white man gave you a check for $1 trillion for slavery or colonialism, he would have all that money back in 30 days because you have no economic infrastructure. So once they get the money, they want to buy a house, they want to buy a car, they want to buy clothes. Who they buying a house from? Who they buying a car from? Who they buying the clothes from?
Where they putting their money?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So before you can receive external reparations, you have to first enact internal reparations for yourself. In other words, we got some home fixing to do. Yes, we have to deal with white supremacy, but we also have to deal with black negligence. We got to deal with black laziness. We got to deal with black apathy. We got to deal with black self-hatred. We have as much work to do amongst ourselves as we have to do confronting the enemy. And any good student of military science will tell you what? You never go to the enemy until you have fixed your own situation, because your enemy will exploit it and use it against you. And a house divided against itself cannot stand.
Wow, man. From there, let's go to a topic we deal with here in the Netherlands. I'm sure you know about the blackface character.
Yes.
They call Zwarte Piet.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
If you go back to colonialism, slavery, that period right after that in America, which we call Reconstruction or the Civil Rights era, you will see that white men and women made a living by projecting very satirical, sarcastic, insulting, and derogatory images of black people as a way of conditioning white people into how they wanted them to view and react to us. We have to be clear. When white people paint their faces black, they're doing that to insult African people, and they're suggesting that we are less than human beings by virtue of the fact of disguising themselves as us and then clowning us in satirical prose as they do this. So this is a very racist thing. It cannot be defended or justified as a custom. Because if you're telling me that you have a custom that is based on racism, and then at the same time you tell me that you are a post-racial people, then you are a hypocrite. It is no way that here in the Netherlands, the white people can claim to be progressive and post-racial if they have a holiday where they dress up in blackface. And mind you, they dress up in the blackest face of all. And they do that to draw a distinction between us and them. And the underlying message is that we as white folk are the most humane people here in the Netherlands, and black folk are the most beastly, because we do not all come in black skin. Yes, that's the original melanated complexion of our ancestors, but now in modern times we come in all colors, light brown, dark brown, so forth. So why don't you dress up in the various variations of brown? You only use the pitches of blackness, because in white cultural reference, black is the color of evil. It is the color of negativity. It is the color of oppression. Now for us, it is a color of divinity and power, but for them, it is a color of negativity. So the reason they intentionally make themselves super black face to celebrate this ridiculous holiday is to try to increase the power of the insult that they're making about black people and our lack of humanity. It is something that the government here needs to outlaw. It is not acceptable and it is not excusable, and no civilized people would condone a custom or a holiday that allows any race to dress up as another race and then poke fun against the race that they're trying to imitate. It is totally disrespectful. If black folks dressed up and put on white faces, there would be outcry. If we put on Jewish faces, there would be outcry. If we put on Anglo-Saxon faces, it would be outcry. If we dressed up and made ourselves look phenotypically like the Asian, there would be an outcry. But it's okay for white people to dress up in the blackest of black skin with big red lips, poking fun at the phenotype of Africans, showing how different it is from Europeans, so as to say we are abnormal and defective. It is okay to do that. That's not acceptable. And if the government of this country claims to be a civilized government and a respecting government, they should do something about that.
I agree with you on that. I totally agree. But you're here right now, blessed.
It's an honor. It's an honor. I'm looking forward to the night.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the brothers and sisters coming out, building with them, getting to meet them. It's always an honor when I travel. Back home in America for the past 3 years, I've been one of the most requested speakers in the country. And within the black revolutionary community, I am the most respected speaker in the country. And I say that not to brag, but to say I've been blessed by the Most High God and our ancestors to be given the opportunity to travel around the world and build with our brothers and sisters from all four corners of the earth. And I've been to London multiple times, Canada multiple times, Africa multiple times, the Caribbean multiple times, and obviously all throughout America to and fro. So I'm really interested in meeting the brothers and sisters here in Amsterdam. And tomorrow, obviously, in Rotterdam, and just building with them and having an opportunity to engage them and answer their questions and, you know, just have a serious conversation. One thing that I'm trying to do in 2014 is organize. Pan-Africanism is the watchword. And back home in America, we have a lot of scholars who go around who teach and they give out the information, which is necessary, but it's not sufficient. We have to organize. And I feel that I have an obligation as the most requested speaker to start organizing our people and not simply giving them the information. And so there's different programs that we're working on right now, one of which is a dual citizenship program where we're hoping to organize a dual citizenship rally outside the United Nations building in New York City, because we want the United Nations to understand that Africans outside of Africa still recognize that we are African and that Africa is our birthright, and that we want the world government to give us the opportunity to become citizens of African countries. And in Toronto, Canada, the first weekend of August, we're going to be hosting the first international Pan-African Grassroots Conference of the 21st century. And we would love for brothers and sisters from Europe and from Holland and the Netherlands to come on over to Toronto that first week in August for that Pan-African Conference, because we have to get down to business and we have to change our political and economic destiny if our children are to have a fighting chance in this reality.
Yeah, that was for the meeting for tonight and for tomorrow for the lectures. I want to go into your book because I didn't get the chance to read that book yet, but Psychoacademic War Against Black Boys.
Yes.
Can you please tell me what you think about the school systems and how they work? And now I know you're not familiar with the school system from Europe, but back in the States, what do you think about it?
Well, first, let me say this. The school systems that we have in America and in Europe and in Africa and in the Caribbean have a lot more in common than they have in difference. Having been to London and having been to Canada and Africa and the Caribbean, I can tell you that most of the systems, although they do have some minute differences, they're largely similar. I'm willing to bet here, as I've already been told earlier, that they have special education here.
Yes, they do.
And that they have ADHD here.
Yes.
And that they give the children dangerous psychiatric medicines here. Yeah. I am at war. I'm waging war against ADHD. I'm waging war against the mild mental retardation, intellectual disability diagnosis. I wage war against the learning disability, because this whole special ed system and this whole ADHD racket, which is what I call it, is a weapon of mass destruction that is being used and has been designed to marginalize black boys. I'm an expert diagnostician. I evaluate children. But the labels that we give children cannot be proven to exist. When someone tells you your child has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, that is only a professional opinion. You cannot prove ADHD. When someone tells you your child is learning disabled, or reading disability, or math disability, that is only a professional opinion. You cannot prove a learning disability. There is no CAT scan, no blood test, no urine sample, no MRI that can prove whether or not a child truly has a learning disability or disruptive behavior disorder. These are imaginary disabilities that grow out of the think tank of white racism that they project onto African children to justify the miseducation, marginalization, and subsequent mass incarceration. I have found that within the European and American social order that there's 5 stages in the extermination of black males. And they love to exterminate the male as a boy. You always kill a plant. If you want to kill a weed, you get it when it's a baby. You don't wait till it grows up. The first stage is miseducation. Teach the black boy to hate himself, to love European culture, and if you can, effeminize him. Stage 2, psychiatric medication. If you cannot force the boy to accept the will of white supremacy, you then move to stage 2. You give him the medication. That's when you bring in the Ritalin, the Adderall, the Metadate, the Cyclert, the Concerta, the Zoloft, the Paxil, the Risperdal, the Depakote, and so many other names. If the boy still doesn't give in, you move to stage 3, juvenile incarceration. That's when you put him in a discipline school or a discipline facility or a residential treatment program. So now he's totally marginalized from his regular peers. He's been singled out as being a nuisance to the school system and a threat to the larger society. He gets out of juvenile detention and now he's psychologically frustrated. He's angry. And now that anger is going to lead him to do what? Drop out of school, not do anything with his life, go to the corner, sell drugs, use drugs to deal with the frustration and stress created by white supremacist unfair educational and social order. And that takes us to stage 5, premature extermination. You guys have a black on black problem, black on black violence issue. We have a black on black violence issue. South Africa has a black on black violence issue. London has a black on black violence issue. How could it be that these different groups of isolated Africans all across the world have black on black violence issues? How can it be that these different groups of Africans isolated across the world have an unemployment issue? Half the black men in Philadelphia are unemployed. Half the black men in New York City are unemployed. Half the black men in Toronto are unemployed. Half the black men in South Africa are unemployed. Half the black men in London are unemployed. How do you explain different groups of Africans scattered around the world, most of whom have never been anywhere else but their own country or continent? How can they be dealing with the exact same political and economic reality? It's because it is socially engineered for us to exist in the confines in which we live. The problem, though, is black people have an increasing difficulty in being able to understand how white supremacy operates. In other words, the new racism is to deny that racism exists. The new racism is to deny that racism exists. Neely Fuller, an elder brother out of DC, I believe, in America, he has a book, compensatory code book on white supremacy. And he says that white supremacy goes through stages. First, white supremacy establishes itself. Then it maintains itself. Then it expands itself, and then it refines itself. We are in the stage of refinement. Refinement is when the authors of white supremacy make the system look like they don't control it. Make the system look like it's not racist. What are some of the strategies that they use to give you the illusion of inclusion? The illusion of inclusion. Well, one thing they'll do is they give you a black president of the United States of America by the name of Barack Obama, who will get into office and take care of every other minority group in America but African people. He will take care of the LBGD community. He will take care of the Latino community. He will take care of white females. He will take care of illegal immigrants. He will take care of Mexicans. He will take care of Asians and do nothing for African people. President Obama has been president of the United States for 5 years and hasn't done a single thing for black people, black women, black men, black elders, or black children. But it looks like America is doing better on the race issue because they have a black token in the White House. See, white supremacy knows the best way to look invisible is to put black people out front. So here in the Netherlands, you guys have a black bourgeoisie. Every city has a black bourgeoisie. These are a group of Negro gatekeepers that the social order of Europe puts in strategic positions to deflect suspicion from itself.
To keep them under control.
To keep them under control. Black politicians or servants of the politicians. Blacks in business, okay, who they finance and prop up to keep the people confused. The religious order, which is the most dangerous, because these are people who tell you that God is in control of this situation. And the reason you're suffering from white supremacy is because you ain't praying enough or reading the Bible enough or going to the mosque enough, okay? So so this ain't got nothing to do with no white supremacy. This is God's decree. Then you have black educated folk who are in your colleges and universities. These are the smart blacks who know what's really going on, but they're paid to act like they don't see what's going on. And then the last group are well-financed black folks. These are black folks with some money. They have money to help us build independent schools. They have money to help us put some black people to school. They have money to build some programs in our communities, but they never spend their money on their own people. Now, if another group needs some money, they can get it, but black people can't get none of it. These are the elitist blacks that white supremacy puts out in front of the black community to deflect suspicion from itself and to confuse the black people as to who their real enemy is. And if you're not careful, you'll go around and say, well, you know what? White supremacy ain't our problem. Black people are our problem. But you fail to recognize that the black people you fighting are being financed by your real enemy, which is the European social order. Now, does that mean all white people have it out for black people? No, it does not. Does it mean all white people wake up with a seething motivation to destroy black people? No, it does not. I would never deny anyone their individuality. Never. I would never make a blanket statement such as all white folks ascribe to the system of white supremacy. But at the same time, I need white people to understand that you benefit from that system. And by doing nothing about it, you are co-signing it. So you might not be an active participant in white supremacy, but you are a passive participant in white supremacy, which makes you just as vulnerable.
What do you think about people that, white people that want to fight against the system?
I welcome it, but they have to fight amongst themselves. If a white person is interested in destroying the system of white supremacy, then work within your own race to destroy it. You don't have to join my organization to fight against white supremacy. And the reason why I don't want you in my organization isn't because I have anything personal against you, but I understand the conditioning of the white mind, and I understand the conditioning of the black mind. And white participation in a black organization can lead to black apathy, because we have been conditioned to look at them as our saviors. So if you have a black organization with white participation, subconsciously, without even realizing it, we will start deferring to the white folks to give us the solutions for our own problems, because we have already been taught and conditioned over centuries that they are the smarter ones and that they have the solutions. So they have to understand that the reason why we don't want you in our organizations ain't because we hate you. I don't teach hate. And we as African people have never stood on the foundation of racial hatred. We are not bigots, and you cannot fight white supremacy by practicing black supremacy, okay? But we need them to understand that you cannot be here because our people are not psychologically mature enough to see you as something other than the saviors that we have constantly been taught that you were. The other thing too, white people have to understand their own arrogance. They have been conditioned that they were superior. So just like we will look to the white member of the black organization for answers and look at them as being intellectually superior, they will also see themselves as intellectually superior. There's no way a white person can be amongst a group of blacks who they have been systematically conditioned to believe are inferior and not think that they have a right to lead us. And if you study the history of white participation in black movements, Europe, Africa, Asia, America, anywhere you go, you will see at some point there had to be a splitting of the black revolutionaries from the white revolutionaries, because the white revolutionaries set themselves up in a maternalistic or paternalistic organizational leadership dictatorship that sought to tell black folks how they can solve their own problems. So they cannot be amongst us because we have issues of depending on them and they have issues of thinking they're superior to us.
But that's the problem, because people, if you're a strong black man, you're like, yeah, I want to build my own organization with my black brothers. And they instantly think that we discriminate or hate them. But that's not even the issue.
That's because every race on the planet knows that black organization is a threat to every other race's progress in the world. Why? Because we are the children of Africa, and Africa is the richest continent on the face of the earth. And because Africa is the richest continent on the face of the earth, the Arab needs Africa to stay backwards. The East Indian needs Africa to stay backwards. The Chinaman needs Africa to stay backwards. The Anglo-Saxon needs Africa to stay backwards. When they see you organize, they get anxious, because they don't know if maybe this might be the organization that picks Africa up off her knees. And if Africa gets up off her knees, guess what? Europe might end up on her knees. Asia might end up on her knees. Africa is the only continent that could survive self-sufficient without any need to borrow any raw resources from any other continent on earth. It's the only one. Every other continent on earth needs Africa. That's why they need her to be backwards, so they can exploit the resources for pennies and then sell it back to Africa for billions. So we are a threat because upon our oppression rests the economic dominance of the world. Upon our oppression rests white supremacy. Upon our oppression rests the march of Chinese progress. Everybody knows that if Africa stands, the rest of the world has to sit. And so you have to make sure the children of Africa are disorganized. Because if we stay disorganized, they never have to worry about Africa coming to power again. Not anytime soon. And the other thing we got to recognize is that Africans outside of Africa might have to play a more key role in Africa's progress than those on the continent. Why? Because we have the money, and we have the education, and we have close proximity to the Europeans who are doing Africa in. So the reason why black people are made to feel guilty organizing amongst themselves is because everyone else is anxious about our ability to help our mother continent pull herself up by her bootstraps in the 21st century.
Wow. That's deep. I want to ask you a final question. Maybe you can go into that. The word Negro. What do you think about that word and what it carries and the weight it carries?
I think the only proper way to refer to ourselves is as African people. I think anything else is a takeaway from our need to identify with our mother continent. As the late great ancestor, Pan-African nationalist scholar Dr. John Henry Clarke said, whatever you call yourself should connect you to land, history, and culture. There is no Negro land and there is no black land, but there is in Africa. So I'm not a supporter of the word Negro or of the word black. However, we have to meet our people where they are. In the 1800s, the 19th century, most black people were called Negro and they identified with Negro. And for that reason, the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey named his organization the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. And we'll be celebrating 100 years of that organization this summer. Mr. Garvey wanted to use African only, but he had to use Negro because nobody would have paid attention. Negro was the universally accepted term. It wasn't accurate, but it's where our people were in terms of their consciousness. Right now, across the world, black is the accepted word. Is it accurate? No. They should be identified as being African, but they're still stuck in not wanting to identify with the continent of origin because of the menticide and the propaganda that has been told to us about Africa. Naked people running around eating each other. So when we hear Africa, we think up and drum up all the negative stereotypes of the continent. So we would rather identify with a color, with an adjective, than with a continent, which is a noun. So I use black so people know who I'm talking to. I might say African American so people know who I'm talking to. And so I think that it's important that we meet people where they are and grow them slowly. For example, I'm a pan-Africanist, which is the highest level of political identity, because now you're identifying with your people. But a lot of our people are not there. They're not even African yet. So you can't take them to pan-African, you see. So you meet them where they are, and we have to grow them slowly. We cannot outpace the people because we'll lose them.
Yeah.
Find them. When I travel the world tonight, I'm going to be able to assess for myself the political consciousness level of blacks here in Amsterdam. Tomorrow, I'll be able to assess the political consciousness level of blacks in Rotterdam, because I got to meet people where they are. So there's certain things I can't talk about, because you cannot feed a baby solid food. You got to give them milk. If you feed them solids, they might be traumatized and never eat again. So you got to meet them where they are. A lot of people ain't ready to deal with white supremacy yet. A lot of people ain't ready to deal with the fact that biracial relationships is not in our best interest, although the children of those relationships are just as African as the rest of us. But we have to stop the practice of mating outside of our race and giving our melanin to the women of other races. Melanin is our gift from God. That's our black gold. That's our spiritual molecule. That's ours. Why would you invest something so priceless as melanin into someone else's womb other than that of the black woman? Some people ain't ready for that conversation, because most of us were raised by parents who were what? Post-racial. We were raised by parents who were totally politically integrated and had no racial consciousness whatsoever. So I don't blame my people for not being conscious, but my job is to try to wake them up. But I also understand that we won't be able to wake up everybody. Not everybody's going to go along for this ride. The European has so conditioned black folks that a lot of us are totally loyal to the system of white supremacy. And we're loyal because we don't think it can ever be changed. So we're loyal to it. So I'm not trying to bring every African to this struggle. I'm looking for the ones who can be salvaged, and I'm looking for the ones who are already ready. That's it. Because if you engage the wrong African about Pan-African organization, they will kill you. They will hurt you. They will sell you out. They will turn you into the European himself. So you got to pick and choose who you're going to struggle with, because a lot of our people are so full of Willie Lynch, that you won't be able to do anything else with them. So you got to pick and choose who you're going to organize with. But we want to stress and stress and stress again to African people and non-African people. But we want to be clear to non-African people that we're not going to waste time trying to prove to you what we are and what we're not. Okay? Pan-Africanism is not a movement of racism. It is not a bigoted movement either. Okay? It is a movement that seeks to reconnect African people and take our mother continent back, because Africa is for the Africans. Africa is not for the Europeans. Africa is not for the Arab. Africa is not for the East Indian. It is not for the Asian either. You can come, you can visit, and if you're going to show respect, you can stay. But understand, this is not your continent. If you are in Africa, it is by privilege. But we have a right to Africa. Africa is for the Africans, and it is not for anyone else. And that is our pledge. And we do not apologize for being unapologetically African, no more than the Jew apologizes for being an unapologetically Jew, that the Chinese man never apologizes for being a Chinese man. And we are not going to apologize for being selfish and exclusive about Africa being ours. So we say that to say that if any non-African is sympathetic to our plight, we respect that. But if you don't like a word of what Dr. Umar Johnson is saying, I could care less. I'm going to do the work that I have to do, even if the opinion of every European on earth was to the contrary. Because I have ancestors who are relying on me to do this. You have ancestors who are relying on you to do this. Marcus Garvey didn't spend his time thinking about what white people thought. Frederick Douglass didn't spend his time thinking about what white people thought. Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Touré, Thomas Sankara, Amilcar Cabral, they didn't spend time thinking about what white folks thought. They was too focused on what they had to do for their people. Revolutionaries have to sacrifice their good standing in the eyes of others if they're going to make progress. If you're trying to help your people, the last thing you can try to win is a popularity contest.
With that being said, I want to close it up for today, and I'm looking forward for tonight where you're going to speak, and I want to thank you for this opportunity.
Not a problem. The honor is all mine.
It's from the Black Coalition, so If people don't know yet, it's the Black Coalition who set this up.